I'm here at Fenway Park, one of the most famous landmarks in all of Boston and home to the beloved Red Sox. The team will play their first home game of their 125th season here on Friday. And while you may love baseball, you might not know how Framingham contributed to the development of the sport in its early days. On this week's episode, we explore how Framingham played a role in Boston baseball history, and how the town carved out its own unique spot in the evolution of the sport. I'm Lilia Cormack, and this is the Frame by Frame.
Going to Fenway has been something I've always enjoyed. Taking somebody there, you see this building that looks like a warehouse from the outside, and you walk through the portal and you see all the green, and it's like walking into heaven, I guess.
Fenway has been home to some of the best baseball players of all time. And although the Red Sox scout their players from all over the world, some were pretty local.
And there have been nine major league players who were actually born in Framingham.
Some of those players include Rich Gedman and Roger Clemens, who lived on Nixon Road while pitching for the Sox.
Well, of course, the local name right now that everybody knows from Framingham is Sweet Lou Merloni.
Lou Merloni is a proud native of Framingham's South Side. He played for the Red Sox and is now their lead analyst on NESN. The first time he ever batted for the team, he hit a 3-run homer over the Green Monster. But before the Green Monster got its name, before Fenway was built, and before the Red Sox even existed, there was a different Boston team, the Boston Braves.
When they started being fielded in the early 1870s, they were one of the earliest teams that we have record of. And in fact, it's purported that they are the longest running fielded team in American sports history. Framingham was very much part of this leadership and ownership cycle from the very beginning.
The Boston Braves' history goes all the way back to the 19th century, when they were originally called the Cincinnati Red Stockings. Sound a little familiar? Anyway, the Red Stockings were the first openly professional baseball team.
So in the 1870s, towards the last part of the decade, there were 3 majority shareholders of the Boston Red Stockings. 2 of them were from Framingham.
William Conant and Arthur Soden helped start the team in its early days. Conant owned the Gossamer Rubber Factory, and Soden went on to become the team's president for 3 decades. Later on in the team's history, another Framingham resident, Louis Perini, took over the team. He was responsible for the Braves' shift from Boston to Milwaukee, a move that had never been done in the league before. The Society for American Baseball Research says one can argue that few men ever made a greater impact on the game without playing professionally.
In fact, at one point, the Boston Braves came to Framingham to play the Cushing team in 1944. It was actually written up in the Boston Globe, and they said that the Braves drub the Cushing, which
that was
I think
the word
was a
that was
little
used,
bit
drub?
hard. Yeah, a little bit harsh. I think Cushing held its own. The final score is 13-5, which
it's not too bad.
5 off for the Boston Braves at this time. Not a terrible score.
The Cushing Anna is referring to is the hospital that served wounded soldiers during World War II here in Framingham. When baseball was just starting, many of the first official teams in the town were organized by local businesses and organizations. This included the hospital, the fire department, and Denison Manufacturing.
Denison Manufacturing has actually very deep, rich history in baseball. So baseball as a professional sport actually didn't start until 1869. By the 1880s, we have indications in newspaper articles that Denison had a fielded baseball team. In fact, by the time they moved to Framingham, they were actually sending them out of state to Maine to go on these baseball tours. Framingham became known as Tag Town because of the Denison tags that were made, and naturally, Denison's baseball team became known as the Tag Men.
In fact, it was so competitive that organizations and businesses would write to Denison asking if they wanted their employees to come play baseball for them, and what positions at the factory they could fill to do so.
And this was really part of company and organization culture at the time. You can see in the late 1880s, but starting up in the 1900s, where these large organizations would have baseball teams and then later basketball teams that would start playing each other.
And that cultural shift was not just felt within the companies.
Just as baseball is America's pastime, you can see that being a pastime in Framingham as well. So when this sort of energy and excitement was happening, the local community was showing up to see it. Now, there weren't necessarily standing stadiums by any means.
Right.
There would be sort of, startups here and there, but it was electric. People were looking forward to it. They were excited about it.
As the popularity of high school sports rose, the prevalence of these leagues declined, but they set up a legacy of gathering around sports.
Baseball and Framingham history really go hand in hand. You see it reflecting local history like the political history, the social history, the economic history, but it was also the history of gathering. What was it like to come together as a community after a long day at work or school and have a little bit of fun together, cheer on local sports, rib your neighbor the next town over, and just enjoy a great evening together watching a great game.